seeking. Hey, in every service that I've been in here with you, I've been at the altar. Well, yeah. So you expect me to come now, because I always do. But it's not formality. I'm a seeker. I am a seeker. I'm after him. I want him. Well, don't you have him? Yeah. That's why I'm seeking, because I have him. See, it's blessed are those who are hungry and thirsting after righteousness. And the indication of the Beatitude is that when I hunger and I thirst, you know what happens? He fills me. But the very act of the filling makes me hungry. It's the chocolate thing. You know, I can't eat one piece. I can't. I just can't. I don't know what the deal is, but I just can't. See, it's that kind of a deal. It's the more I know him, the more I want him, the more I... And there's this seeking thing. So, hey, when I kneel at an altar, I'm not playing games. I'm not, well, I want to be an example for the guys. It's not that. Good night. That would be fakey. Come on. You think I'm a fake? I'm telling you, I have this thing in my heart that, man, I want him. I'm seeking. I'm seeking. And the whole key to the passage of God reaching into the wise men's lives and dragging them in to the very fulfillment of his plan and using them. He didn't have to use them. But the very fact that he used them was because they were asking, they were seeking, they were wanting, they were desiring. He'll do that for you. Let's talk about this seeking. Number one, focus. There's a focus in the seeking. I'm telling you, there's a focus in the seeking. Last week we talked a little bit about the wise men. They were from Babylon. And we talked about how 600 years prior to this scene, Israel, in a backslidden condition, was captured by Babylon. And the king Nebuchadnezzar, he was king over Babylon, but the wise men, see, the setup their culture was the wise men. The wise men were the top guys. They had the political power. They were the power people of the culture. In fact, a king could not be a king unless he had the training of the wise men. And they were trained in scientific investigation, astrology, wisdom, all that stuff. Hey, and to be a king, you had to go through all of their training. So you had to be a wise man to be a king. And you had to be approved by the wise men to be the king. So they literally were the makers of the kings. The wise men were the makers of the kings. That's powerful. These are the top boys. So when they brought Israel, captured Israel, the nation, the Jews, and brought them into captivity in Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar the king spotted some of the bright young men of Israel and said, I want them, and I want them trained as wise men. Daniel was in that group. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, the fiery furnace thing, that they were in that group. And they were all trained as wise men. Something happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He had this nightmare. He had this dream. And in this dream, he couldn't figure out what it meant. So who did he go to find out what the dream meant? He went to the wise men. But wise men after wise men after wise men that he asked what the dream meant didn't know, had no clue. So in desperation, he didn't know what to do. So you know what happened? The apprenticed wise men, which was Daniel, was an apprentice. He stepped forward and said, King, I'll tell you. And he laid out the whole dream of what God intended to tell Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel, as a wise man, an apprentice wise man. Now, the king was so mad, he decided, I'm going to kill all the other wise men who couldn't get an apprentice, gave me the answer. I'm going to kill all the big shot wise men. So you know what Daniel did? He pleaded the cause, went to the king and said, King, don't do that. And he pleaded the cause and saved the lives of all the top wise men of Babylon. And the king said, okay, I won't do that. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to appoint you, Daniel, as the top number one trainer, teacher, authority of the wise men. So Daniel became the chief wise man of all of Babylon. Now, if you were one of the wise men that Daniel had just saved your life, how would you feel about Daniel? Yeah, you'd have some loyalty. You'd have some, hey, I'm listening to you, son. I'm listening to you. And what do you suppose Daniel taught them? He's a Jew. Come on. He knows Jehovah God, and he knows Messiah. A Messiah is coming. So Daniel taught all the wise men about Jehovah God, one God. And the whole worship structure of Babylon changed under the leadership of Daniel. That was 600 years before this. A seed was planted. Now, these wise men have seen a star. Where did they get the idea there was a new king born? It came from 600 years earlier. The training, the implanting of that seed. And here's these, God is on the move, people. Oh, God has a phenomenal plan. So these guys were seeking then. See, they were, we want truth. Okay. We want to know the real God. Okay. We want in on what's really going on. Okay. A star shows up. They're seeking. They get a revelation. They pack their bags. They walk for 2 years. They are riding on camels for 2 years. They're coming. They come finally to Jerusalem. See, they're after this thing. They are seeking. And they have one focus. What is their focus? Theology. No. They're a bunch of pagans. This is not theology. What? This is a new king is born. We want him. What are they after? What are they seeking? Well, we got some problems at home, and if we could find the new king, he could wave his magic. No, they haven't got a problem. See, all in the everywhere you go in the scriptures, there's these people like in the Old Testament, Nahum, he has leprosy, so he comes to the prophet. What's he after? I want healing. They're not after healing. The blind guys in the New Testament, they're crying out, oh, Son of David, have mercy on us. What do they want? They want healing for their eyes. They're not. The wise men have no agenda. The wise men they have one focus. The new king. We're after him. We want him. I'd like to gather you together and just pull you into that. Wouldn't it be something if everything else was literally pushed aside? I know I have a lot of needs. So do I. There's a lot of pressure on me. I know. I understand that. But wouldn't it be something to push everything aside and simply, no agenda, just go after him? And if I went after him like that, do you suppose that he'd reach out and grab a hold of me and pull me into the fulfillment of his dream? And I could become intimate in his plan, and he would use me in the midst of all the demonic forces that are wanting to destroy and ruin He would somehow use me in the midst of all of that to save the day. And what would be the one criteria? One single focus. Him. I know I'm an evangelist, and I know we evangelists, we bait the hook. I know that. Yeah, we bait the hook. We look at you and say, don't you want happiness? Yeah. Don't you want peace in your life? Yeah. Don't you want solution to your problems? Yeah. Don't you want deliverance? Yeah. Well, what idiot in this place would say, no! And after we baited the hook, we say, oh, come to Jesus. And you'll get all that. What if I told you, come to Jesus, you'll probably have to get on a mule and run for your life because the king will try to get you. What if I told you, come to Jesus, and instead of having a nice marriage with a husband and wife and a nice child and a white picket fence and everything is rosy, rosy, suddenly there's this cloud of illegitimacy and the child is born and you're not the dad. Well, why would I seek? Because, if you will, in the midst of all the demonic forces that are out there and all the plan and all the pitfalls and all the stuffs around you, there is a divine God who wants to reach into your life, grab a hold of you, and literally pull you into the intimacy of his plan and dream. And he wants to use you. And you get to be in the conference table with him sitting on one side, you sitting on the other side, and say, whoa. Because you're seeking with no agenda. Now, let me take this a step further. Because what if, here's the proposal. What if God he didn't have to do it with the wise men. Could have done it 1,000 other ways. But he reached into the wise men's life and pulled them into his intimacy of his plan and sent them home another way and used them for his glory. What if he wants to do that with you? Well, what's the element? What's the necessary thing that causes that to happen? Seeking. And the seeking has a focus. And the focus is just him. Just him. That's all I'm after is him. A revelation of him. If God could become real in my life, that's all I'm after. Number 2, facilitation. The facilitation of the focus has to be total. Now, this is really strong. It has to be total. I'm talking total. I'm talking absolute total. I'm talking everything total. I'm not talking some sections of my life, not others. I'm talking total. I'm talking there has to be in the depth of my heart this abandonment to this one thing. See, that's where the rub is. Well, I'll tell you, preacher, I'll try Jesus and see if it works. It won't. I can guarantee it. It won't work. You mean if I try him, it won't work? Well, no. Why? Because it's not total. Now, God may honor that, and he may work with you, and he may probe you, but if he's going to grab a hold of you and pull you in to the wonder of his dream and the fulfillment of his passion, and you're going to be intimate with this thing, it has to be total. It isn't a try thing. It isn't on trial thing. It isn't, I'm putting you on probation, God. We'll see how you work out. See, it's not that. Well, let's try baptism. Well, did it work? No. Didn't work. Just didn't work. Why? Because it's not total. See, this is an inner attitude of the heart that says, God, I'm abandoning myself to this one thing. Seeking you. I know that sounds a little off the wall, but it's so biblical, people. And could I tell you that I can say this to you without a red face? I don't have to be embarrassed about this. I don't have to soft pedal this. Like, yeah, well. See, I don't have to do that because Jesus is worthy of the total. See, who he is so phenomenal that it's worth everything in your life to be intimate with him. Jesus is so phenomenal, so high, so great, that he is worthy of the total abandonment of your life. And that what he's doing is, he is taking everything in your life, all the obstacles in your life, all the circumstances of your life, and he's literally using them to crowd you to the realization that there is just one single thing for you to focus on. When I was a sophomore in high school, I got a hold of this book by L.E. Maxwell. Old book then, so it's probably, maybe it was handwritten, I don't know, anyway. On parchment paper, probably. But anyhow, it was called Crowded to Christ. His whole premise is that everything in my life, all the circumstances of my life, you know what they're doing? They're crowding me. Crowding me. Everything that's happening to me is doing what? Crowding me to Christ. Pushing on me. That all my temptations are pushing on me. They're pushing me to Jesus. C.T. Studd, a great missionary, said, it doesn't matter where the pressure in your life lays. We're always saying, oh, just too much pressure. Doesn't matter what about the pressure. Doesn't matter about the amount of pressure. Only matters where the pressure lies. If it's never between you and Christ, it always pushes you to him. His premise was this. Here's Jesus, here's me. Jesus, me. If the pressure never gets in here, if it's always out here, Jesus, me, pressure's out here. See, if it's in here, it pushes me away. If it's always out here, it pushes me to him. Come on, bring it on, man. Bring it on, devil. Do what you want to do. Why? Because the more temptation you give me, you know what it's going to do? Drive me to Jesus. So the more temptation, the more I'm going to seek him. And if that's what you want, Mr. Devil, just bring it on. Just bring it on. The more pressure there is in my life, the more I'm going to seek him. The more problems I have, the more I'm going to seek him. The more flat tires I have, the more I'm coming after him. So this whole life of mine is just doing what? Pressing me towards him. Wow. So see, that eliminates all my excuses in terms of, oh, I got so much pressure. Well, praise God. Let it squeeze you to Jesus until he is the total, absolute focus of your entire life. And you are seeking him and him alone. Total. But there's this other idea about it too. See, the seeking, if he wants to reach into your life and pull you into the intimacy of using you in his plan, what's the criteria for that? Seeking. But it's not just seeking, it's a focus in the seeking. And it's focused on him. It's focused on him. And the seeking has to be total. But the seeking is filled with trouble. Now, we've already indicated this. But think of the trouble that the wise men went through to seek Jesus. And could I say to you that the totality, the measure of your seeking is determined by the sacrifices you are willing to make for the seeking. Think about this. Could I tell you? Well, how do I know when I'm totally seeking him? Look at the sacrifices you're willing to make to find him. See, these guys traveled 2 years. Can you imagine this wise man coming to his wife saying, listen, here's a little money. I'll be back. It won't take more than a month. I'll find this new king. I'll come back. It was 2 years, and they wouldn't quit. They traveled with an army. They're feeding that. Money is going out right and left. No income. Think of that. Think of what this is costing them. They have stepped into the middle of a demonic battle. Herod on the one side saying, I'm going to kill that kid. And here they are wanting to worship him. And they're in the middle of a demonic battle. Think of the mess. They should have stayed home, could have watched TV. Think of the trouble. The trouble. And think of what they got out of it. See, that's the crazy thing. They got nothing. Absolutely nothing. They came, they worshiped, they gave their expensive gifts, and went home. Well, what was the benefit? We found him. He was their only benefit. That's weird, isn't it? You know, at least he ought to make me good looking, or at least he ought to, send money through the mail or something. No. Well, don't I get a big streets of gold in heaven? I don't know. You can have them if you want them. But wouldn't it be something if this is only about him and seeking him and totally seeking him, and that's measured by the sacrifices? What kind of sacrifices are you willing to make? Well, Manley, I'd like to be a great Christian. What kind of sacrifices are you willing to make? I wish I had Jesus just real in my life. What kind of sacrifice are you willing to make to do that? I wish I had the wisdom of God in my brain. What kind of sacrifice are you willing to have? What kind of sacrifice are you willing to make? I'd like to have a godly home and raise my kids in the presence of Jesus. What kind of sacrifice are you willing to make? See, how far will you go? See, that's the issue of total. See, I can stand here and say, I'm totally after Jesus. What kind of sacrifices are you making? Form the content of that. Well, I'm only about half through, but that really is the issue, you know. But I'll let you in on a secret. The sacrifices you will make, you will eventually look at and say, those weren't sacrifices. You know what Peter says? Peter says, can you imagine? We have bars on our windows. It's kind of like, church is like jail. We don't let you out until the time. And we hold you here. And so we have to have bars. Because can you imagine, we sit in here and we look out, people that got to sleep in this morning. And, I sacrificed to come. Peter called this standing at the window, looking out on all the ungodly people and people who are doing everything they want to do, and the sacrifices we make. We look at that, he says, and look out the window and say, oh, I miss what I gave up. I miss my dog vomit. This is before dinner, too. Isn't that interesting? He called everything I give up to seek Jesus dog vomit. That's interesting, isn't it? Jesus, you're just amazing beyond belief. And thank you, Lord, that I don't have to water it down. I don't have to be embarrassed to say that seeking you and you alone is all there is. Oh God, make me like the wise men who have no agenda except you, who have a desperation of totality within them, and are willing to make any sacrifice if I can just find the new king. I've got to find the new king. I am driven to find the new king. And in that seeking, you reached into their lives and literally drew them into the intimacy of your plan, and you used them. And here we are, 2,000 years later, still talking about them and marveling at their seeking and hungering for you. God, give us some young men in this place who will absolutely die to themselves and all of their body pleasures and all of their own personal agendas and all of their little temporary fixes, and give us some young men who will absolutely be captured by you and seek you, who will see a star and say, I can't quit. Whatever sacrifice has to be made, I'm in, and will come after you. And Lord, the benefits of that I know are immense. I know there is happiness. I know there is peace. I know there is forgiveness. I know there is all of these things that you are in our lives. But Jesus, they are all secondary to finding you. Give us some young women who have one burn and one passion. Lord, I would pray for a young lady that I met in a revival several weeks ago, who in counseling shared with me, Lord, move upon her right now, shared with me that she wanted you, but she was in a relationship with a guy and she just couldn't give that up. Her seeking wasn't total, and she couldn't find you. Didn't matter how much we prayed. She couldn't get through to you. The blockade of her half-heartedness. We come today with one agenda. We come today with one heart. We come today with one passion. We come today. We're not here to argue baptism. We're not here to argue theology. We're not here to argue rules. We're here today for a revelation of yourself. Would you just split the sky wide open? Would you bring the star again? Would you let your face be seen and known? Would you let the deep internal presence of your Spirit literally wrap yourself around our inward gut and literally woo us and bring us into an intimacy with yourself as we totally today set aside every agenda and only want you and you alone. Do that as we seek you, Jesus. Heads are bowed. Our altars open for seekers. Seekers of Him. How far are you willing to go? What sacrifices are you willing to make? What dog vomit will you give up to find him? Or maybe I should say, how far would you go? What would you give for him to find you? Be obedient.